Welcome to this week's virtual Drasha. And this week we read in Parshas Vayetzei the incredible and dramatic story of Yaakov Avinu's flight from the familial home to the unknown home of his uncle Lavan, to the unknown treachery of Haran. And the Torah tells us that the first encounter between Yaakov and Rachel, Yaakov Avinu already knows that this is his bashert, this is his soulmate. See, he approaches Rachel's father, he approaches Lavan, and the Torah says as follows. This is the beginning of the third aliyah. Vayehov Yaakov es Rachel. Yaakov Avinu loved Rachel. Vayomer, and he says to Lavan, I'll make you a deal, Lavan. I'll work for you 7 years for the hand of your daughter Rachel in marriage. So Lavan's response is very interesting. Lavan says in the next pasuk, Vayomer Lavan says essentially to Yaakov, you know what, fine, better you than some other guy. Okay, not the nicest thing that a father-in-law could say to a son-in-law, but again, for Lavan this was pretty good. But then the Torah records something amazing. So the agreement is reached. Yaakov is going to marry Rachel, and the price for her hand in marriage is working for Lavan for 7 years. And then the Torah says as follows. This is Perek Chav Tes, Pasuk Chav, chapter 29, verse 20. Vayavod Yaakov berachel sheva shanim. Yaakov worked for Rachel's hand in marriage for 7 years. Vayu be'enov ki yamim achadim. And it was in his eyes, this 7 years was like Yamim Achadim. We'll translate that phrase in just a moment. Ba'avaso also, out of his love for her. So what does it mean? These 7 years went by like Yamim Achadim. So the Uncle says, V'haya be'enohi ki yomin zi'irin. It was like a short number of days. Like a short number of days. In other words, it just went by quickly. And the Chizkuni says as follows, Davar mu'at haya be'enav. It went by quickly. Yamim achadim, just the days flew by. You know, Rabbi Dr. Abraham Twersky, Zecher Tzaddik Livracha, asks such a profound question. He says it doesn't make sense. He says generally, when you're eager for something to occur, when you're looking forward to something, time inches by slowly, right? Every kid knows about this. You begin the school year, you have your calendar, and you begin to check off the boxes, on the X number of days behind me, right? These days still in front of me, and you feel like the clock is moving backwards. Yet, interestingly enough, it's the opposite dynamic by Simcha, right? By incredible, beautiful, joyous events, they seem to just fly by. But when you are eagerly awaiting for something to occur, eagerly awaiting for something exciting, it feels like time is advancing at a snail's pace. And yet, amazingly enough, by Yaakov Avinu, he's working for Rachel's hand in marriage for 7 years. Vayu be'inav ki yomim achadim. It was like, now again, the way everybody's translating it, went by quickly. And Rabbi Twersky makes an amazing observation. He says, think about the word Yamim Achadim. Yamim is days. Achadim means one. Right? The days were a series of ones. And what Rabbi Twersky posits, really based on his career, a whole lifetime spent with dealing with people, grappling with addictions, was that sometimes the only way to make it through life is one day at a time. Yomim Achadim doesn't mean the days flew by quickly. Yomim Achadim is the Torah teaching us, how did Yaakov Avinu deal with this? He knew that he was dealing with a deceitful man. And 7 years to work for the hand of his beloved, 7 years to wait to marry Rachel Imenu. How did you do it, Yaakov? Yomim Achadim. Because Yaakov Avinu didn't think about 7 years. Yaakov Avinu thought about today. Let me get through today. And after I get through today, I'll Hashem get through tomorrow. And after I get through tomorrow, I'll take care of the next day. Yomim Achadim, one day after the next. One day at a time. And in fact, Rabbi Twersky makes an amazing observation. He says, if you look at the end of last week's parsha, when Rivka summons Yaakov and tells him, you got to get out of Dodge, you have to get out of town. Your brother Esav is misnachim lagecha, is getting ready to kill you. What does Rivka say to Yaakov? She says, I want you to go brach al Lavan achi, go run away to Lavan. V'yashavta imo yamim achadim. And Rivka says to his son, now again, all the Mefarshim translate that as Rivka saying to her son, you'll just be with Lavan for a short amount of time. But perhaps Rivka Imenu knew that it was not going to be a short amount of time. And what she was giving her beloved son was a profound piece of life advice. If you want to navigate the complexities and tumultuous situations in life, there's only one way to do it. Yomim achadim. One day at a time. one day at a time, one foot in front of the other. How do you deal with a treacherous Lavan? How do you deal with life adversity? One day at a time. And what an incredibly profound yesod. Because so often in life we are faced with overwhelming circumstances, and a lot of times as we stare down these circumstances, we wonder to ourselves, how will I ever get to the other side of this challenge? How will I ever make it through this? I can't see how I'm going to be able to sustain this challenging situation for a prolonged amount of time. And what Yaakov Avinu is teaching us is that when you confront a challenge, don't confront it in the long game, confront it in the short game. Yomim achadim. When you find yourself in difficult circumstances, what you need to focus on is one foot in front of the other. Make it through one day at a time. Rabbi Twersky, of course, draws on his extensive, as I mentioned before, his extensive work with those grappling with addictions. And in the world of addictions, it's the same idea, right? How many days could I maintain my sobriety? The goal is not 50 years of sobriety. The goal is today. And after I finish today, the goal will be tomorrow. And after tomorrow, it'll be the day after next, one day after the other. And you string together those days, and they make a beautiful, beautiful panoramic view of success. Yomim achadim. We all encounter challenges. We all get overwhelmed by our challenges. We all wonder how we'll ever navigate out of challenges. And Yaakov Avinu whispers in our ear, Yomim achadim, one day at a time. But it's not just challenges. Because the truth is, even a lot of times with the good things, we want to take something on. We want to sink our teeth into a project. I want to start learning something new, doing something new, observing something new, taking upon myself a new behavior. And often what we ask ourselves is, well, can I sustain it? Because a lot of times the way we trick ourselves into thinking is, I'm only going to do something if I could sustain it, right? I'm only going to do something if I know that I could perpetuate it. But if I can't sustain it, what's the point of trying, of starting something, if you can't sustain it? And the truth is, it's such a fallacy, because no one of us can make any commitments to sustain anything, because I don't know what happens tomorrow. I don't know what becomes of me. I don't know what becomes of my life. So the goal in life is make today great. You want to take something on? Fantastic. Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't require you to sign on the dotted line, to observe, to take on, to accomplish for X amount of days or weeks or months or years. Because Kadosh Baruch Hu knows better than anyone that often it's difficult for me to honor those long-term commitments. Yamim achadim, one day at a time. One day of spiritual accomplishment is something meaningful as well, even if you don't sustain it in the long term. One day of learning, meaningful. One day of chesed, one day of tzedakah, one day of tefillah, one day of better midos, one day of fighting your vices, your drives, your wants, your lusts, even if I can't sustain it. Yamim achadim, one day is meaningful. Yaakov Avinu was able to sustain a difficult close to 2 decades with Lavan because he adopted one simple life approach. Vayu be'einav kiyamim achadim. In times of difficulty, struggle to keep your head above water, struggle to keep it together just one day at a time, one foot in front of the other. And with our midos tovos, with our beautiful good initiatives, don't worry about what's going to happen in the future. Just focus on maximizing today. Yomim achadim for Yaakov Avinu, Yomim achadim Emir Hashem should allow us to meet our struggles, to meet our challenges, and Emir Hashem enjoy the successes of life. Wishing everyone a good and Erev Shabbos and a beautiful Shabbos Kodesh.